Good day. As you know, I am Kaylin, and today we're going to be doing a little bit more troubleshooting. We're going to discuss then why a employee perhaps couldn't clock, either then via proximity or fingerprint. And then also I'm going to show you how to set the date and time on a CS time clock or Cape clock, which you can do that then obviously from the software itself. So let's start off with the fact that employees cannot clock. There's a few things that you can check. Obviously, if you're working with proximity readers, those little white cards that you're clocking, the first thing that you want to check is the correct card actually assigned, the card number that's on the bottom of the card, is that the card number that has been assigned to that employee. So obviously if you would go then to your blue man, you would highlight that employee, go to cards and make sure that that card number that's been assigned here is the one that has been assigned. If there is no card assigned in this case, it would be understandable why that employee couldn't clock. You would just then need to go and assign another card and select the card number that matches that number on the proximity card. So that's the first thing that you would check then in terms of proximity. When it boils down to fingerprint then, you would obviously then check whether the employee is enrolled on that clock. In a previous training session I showed you guys how to enroll the employees on the CS time clock. So first things first, you would establish that that guy has actually been enrolled on the clock. If you know that he has been done, the next thing that you would also check, once again, you can confirm that that card has been assigned because the fingerprint gets attached to a card number. And then also then what you can do is this employee actually using the correct card, correct finger? There has been situations where you've had an employee that you've enrolled their thumb for argument's sake, and they now go and use their pointing finger, or you've enrolled their right hand, and now they go and try and clock with their left hand. Understandably, in that case, it's obviously not going to match that fingerprint, and it will not clock that employee then. So also confirm then that the employee is using the correct finger then. And lastly, the other thing is also, if the employee cannot clock, you would then, easiest is always to go and check on the clock itself on the screen. Go and check what is the message that is returned when this employee tries to clock. So basically, it would say no fingerprint matched. You would know that it's obviously not connecting those fingerprints, either because he's not enrolled or he's not placing the correct finger then. The other thing, that message that you might get on the clock as well is if you're using access control, you might have a time zone, so he's actually not allowed to even clock in this period now. Your time zone is set up between 7 and 8 o'clock, he's allowed to clock. So it could be a time zone. He could be in the incorrect area. So he's, for argument's sake, you've got pathing on, and this employee is trying to clock out at a turnstile, and he hasn't actually clocked out at the workstation clock yet. So obviously, because you've got pathing on, he needs to clock out at the workstation clock first before he can clock out at the turnstile. So you would obviously then need to check that he is in the correct area. So I always say check the message on the clock. That should narrow it down quite a bit to what exactly you need to check. Especially if you're using access control, then you would want to look at that screen then. So that's the basics that you can just check if the employee cannot clock. Obviously, if he's cut his fingers, well, it might be just that he's badly damaged his finger and that the clock can't get such a clear, reading for that, for that fingerprint. Obviously, then also just try and re-enroll that employee on that card again. It'll replace the old fingerprint, and you can obviously then test again whether he can clock. After you have enrolled an employee, it's always best for you to also test that employee can clock to verify that it is working then. And then the next thing is the date and time. So you've got your clock, and for some reason the date and time has gone out. You need to set that then. In your user module, you'll see then the third last icon is your browse device setup window. In the screen, if you click on that, you click on the plus sign. Now this is obviously dependent on your setup, what you're going to see here, whether you're using Cape clocks or hand punch or whatever. You'll see then the different clocks, and obviously your description will be then according to yours there. You would then just highlight that clock then, whichever clock you need to set the date and time on, and on the left hand side you'll see it says set date and time. As simple as that. So we can click that. Now remember that your server module needs to be open in order for this set date and time to work. Obviously it needs that communication to be open to go and retrieve the date and time from the clock. You would see on the first line, it shows your PC's date and time. So first things first, also just check that your PC date is correct, because you can use this then to set that clock. Or else you can obviously go and manually enter that time then. And then you can see on the second line it shows your clock and it shows the time. I can see that this clock is about 6 minutes behind. My date is right, so I'm fine with that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this device time and date, and this is going to actually set it to the date and time of your PC. So if that is incorrect, obviously the clock will set incorrectly as well. So I'm going to say set date and time. It'll then send this information down to the clock, and it'll change that date and time to the same as your computers. Okay, you can also go and manually enter a date and time where you can enter that information and then set the device time and date. So it's as simple as that. Just checking if your employees can't clock, whether their cards have been assigned, whether they are enrolled, if it's a fingerprint, and whether they're using the correct finger. And then also if you've got access control, read the message on the clock, whether they're in, perhaps clocking out outside a time zone, or if they're perhaps not in the correct area. You can check that then. And then obviously the set date and time is easy enough. From your device setup screen, you would then highlight your clock and set date and time, and it'll actually get that information back from the clock. I hope you have learned something today, and that you will join me next time. Goodbye.